So Brian, that actually, before we take another question, what you said actually leads me to an interesting question. Of the Biz Spark promoted companies that you'd see on the website you pointed out, are any of them doing freemium, or are they all basically all the ones you know?
No, there are actually quite a few doing freemium. Matter of fact, one of them, just again, a Capital Factory in Austin, Hourville. So that's a great example of it. So these guys came up with an idea that there's a bunch of people that have hourly services, whether you're, teach trumpet or flute, or you wash cars per hour, whatever it is, they're basically becoming a paid Craigslist, if you will. So they do have a freemium. So you can do a certain amount of things on their service for free, and then if you want more listing, more space, more storage, then you start to pay. So absolutely. I mean, it's definitely a model, I think, that works, and you said it. It's about a user base. It's about building a network. It's about getting as many people as you can. Because I think a lot of times businesses, once you set a price, it is very difficult to raise that price back up again. So if you go low, good luck trying to raise that price again without a lot of new interest, without a lot of new user bases. So you have to be smart. And this was actually Hourville's. I mean, again, this was a company that graduated from Capital Factory, but sitting down with lunch with them out there, they're like, what is the right price, right? What is that magical number that we can get away with? And they're like, well, we're just going to do this. I'm like, well, you might want to think about that, because once you set that price, it's extremely difficult to say, well, that might not have been the right price. I'm going to lower it or raise it. So just, that's one of the things you got to think through.
So would that mean that if we're considering that model, it would be a better conversation to have if I'm telling you, here's what I think the crossover point is. Here's the price. I'm not just saying it's going to be free now and eventually we're going to do something, come hang with me. Instead, the business paper, the term sheet has, here's where and why we're free or low. Here's when, why, and where we'll be higher.
Yeah.
It sounds like I'd get more attention.
Absolutely, and I think if you have a model that you've thought through and you think that your growth rate will be this and this is why you think it, and you're going to, so you'll not necessarily be profitable, but hey, I think I'll have enough cash flow to support my business and lower my burn rate. I think all those things are part of the conversation if you're doing that.
Yeah, I would say you need to have evidence that someone's going to pay for your paid version, regardless from the beginning. I think the free for the kind of, because it's easier to get people to try it, is dangerous. I think you can do that in different ways, like 2 months free, not a free version. There are interesting things you can do with pricing. So you're right that once your customer, but there are certain times that you can become more valuable to your customer over time, and I think you can raise your price. But you have to be smart in how you pitched it initially. So this is your beta pricing, because you're a beta customer. You can also do things around, on the web, what's really cool is you can actually have different versions out there, and you can test what the right price is. I mean, no one needs to know that the guy in Georgia got $5 and the guy in New York City got $20 when you're just testing stuff out. I mean, A/B testing on how the website works, you can also do that in pricing and bundling and a bunch of other things. So there's tons of experimenting you can do on the web that you've never been able to do in traditional businesses. That's exciting from a startup standpoint. But I mean, you're right. It's hard to justify an increase unless you're building something. Like, for instance, the company I was talking about, they might actually be able to raise a price over time because of network effects. They're becoming more valuable as more people and more essential. And so maybe 2 years down the road, information services are that way too. If someone gets addicted to you, and they build their whole system around how they work around you, and that's why VCs like those kinds of businesses, because they're little mini monopolies sometimes. Price is the hardest thing. I think that is fundamentally the hardest thing from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah, and I think a good example of that I just have been reading about lately, and I think they're not a startup. I'm not familiar enough with SugarSync to know how long they've been around, how much investment they have. But a lot of articles that have been coming out, they have the free version, the paid version, and so not only do you have to think about price, but you have to think about what you're going to offer at that free version. And SugarSync's problem right now, and this may or may not be a problem, but it's been talked about enough, is that their free offering is pretty good. And they're having a really hard time getting people to convert from free to that paid version, because they got a bunch of people signed up for their free version, and they're finding out, wow, that's pretty good. I don't need that They,
do they do it based on amount of storage?
They do it based on amount of storage, amount of PCs that you could sync
Okay.
with, but the storage is the big key.
We have another, there's another example. We have another portfolio company called Splunk, which is one of the kind of higher flyers now in the Valley in the enterprise space. It's basically Google for IT managers, so it indexes all the logs that come out of servers and things like that, and allows you to troubleshoot security, compliance, and a bunch of other things. And the way they did this, it's a download. It's not a web. It's not a web app. But what they did is the initial download is free or really cheap. But it's the pricing is based, or the levels of pricing is based on how much you index. So it's kind of the traditional you try it a bit, and then you get addicted to it because you really like it, and then it naturally grows it's built into the product usage itself with the pricing. And so if you can do that, I think if it's people seeing the value and it's tied to what they're using, I think it's easier to move up than if it's it's just a nice to have, not essential.
Yeah. It's a typical drug dealer.
Yeah, exactly.